Hello and welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. I am beyond excited for today's next chapter of our Kafka Data Talks. With me are two great friends, both of whom are both industry experts in their own ways, bring a wealth of experiences to this, and it's absolutely a privilege to be a part of this with them. If this is your first call with us, this conversation really is about bringing together industry experts around some critical conversations and talk tracks around data, the use of data in the business, and hopefully a couple fun zingers along the way to keep them on their toes. So with that, let me dive right in. Today, I have the privilege of again, being with two fantastic people. Casey O'Shea, CTO from a fantastic partner that we work very closely with called Atyeti, and Howard Holton, Chief Operating Officer and CTO of GigaOm, who you've probably seen across doing different podcasts, thought leadership pieces from all around the world and back. So gentlemen, absolute pleasure. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you.
So let me do this. We always try to break the ice in a little unconventional ways. You guys know me. I try to veer off the beaten path. Would love, if you can, take a minute, introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and I have two random ones for you. First, beard preparation process and products. What do you use? Howard, don't lie, we know you use extensions. Casey, I know there's a gallon of beer, conditioning in that. Also, what's your favorite movie and why? I'd love to hear that. So, Casey, let me start with you, a little bit about yourself, and obviously the two most important questions.
So a little bit about myself. I grew up in a log cabin in rural New Mexico. Behind my house was 400,000 acres of national forest land, and then went to school in New York City from there. This is my third career. My first career was I ran for track and field for Readiness. My second is I was a bartender in New York City and LA. And now this is my third. And my first job in technology, I didn't own a computer, and I started a company called postersale.com, and kind of learned everything from scratch from there. My background is in political science and economics with a minor in visual arts. So it was a very eclectic way into the industry, and I think that to tell you the truth, the bartending skills I use every day in managing clients and relationships and everything of that nature. It's been a great help for me.
And so I also started my career in bartending, and I can tell you it's probably the best on-job training before you actually get to tech. So wait, beard manscaping.
Beard. So I'm actually a really bad beard owner, which is one reason I keep shaving it on a regular basis. A lot of times it's like soap, which just strips away all the oil and everything of that nature. So it gets a really big kind of like homeless looking kind of beard is my go-to. Usually it correlates with I'm like diving into some thing and trying to learn it, and my hair goes wild, and and then I'm like, oh, okay, I figured this out, and now it gets trimmed up a little.
I've been with you when it looks like that, and I admire the confidence.
Yes.
What's your favorite movie?
So to tell you the truth, my movies changed basically almost like on a regular basis, but I watched a really unique movie just the other day called Flow. It just came out. It's just about animals. It's animated, and there's no speaking in it. It's just like the cats walking and talking and doing things. It's kind of like a apocalyptic movie about a flood, coming in. And, it's just kind of like one of those really unique things that, will kind of stick with you. Might not be for everyone, but yeah.
I love it. All right, H2, you're up. Let's pivot to you. Tell us about yourself, and then let's go into it.
So interestingly enough, I'm on the spectrum. I didn't know I was on the spectrum when I was a kid. And in an attempt to relate with people my own age, when I was too young to be able to do it legally, I took bartending classes, got certified as a bartender, just so I could be the bartender at parties and actually have something that I could do to participate. I found that gave me a level of confidence and a level of comfort kind of being behind the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I could engage with people for 2 or 3 minutes and then shoo them away before I got overwhelmed by, human contact, and then do it again. And I went from, why did anybody invite him to the party, to that is the coolest guy at the party. Right. And I made no change whatsoever except learning how to mix drinks.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I tend to agree that bartending is a fantastic skill to have. It's great at parties. It's great for conversation. Also, you can sit around at dinner going, I wonder what the aperitif will be, and create something magical, which I did last night.
Exactly.
My background started exactly the opposite of Casey's. I wrote a piece of software when I was 11. I created templates and watermarking for WordPress 5.1 back in the late 80s. My dad closed his law office and started a computer consulting company. And I never actually left IT except a brief stint into running a commercial kitchen. I started a restaurant for a little bit. I've been an engineer, an architect, in a CIO, a CTO, and a CISO in retail, automotive, healthcare, telecom, manufacturing, high tech, blah, 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 for almost 37 years. It'll be 37 years in May, I think.
That's amazing, man. Congrats. Yeah. And
so
how often do you have to redo your extensions?
Yeah. So I don't give away the secrets on my extensions. I am not allowed to cut my own beard. The only way it gets this long is because I stopped trimming it, because when I would trim it, it would just kind of start to go like this. Because I could do this side really well, but my left hand sucks, and so it would just get shorter and shorter and shorter, and so before long it just kind of looked like this. It was terrible.
Yeah, I did go to a professional beard trimmer once. It was the best experience ever.
I did.
So,
well, I know. Yeah. Every time I get a haircut, I get a beard trim, and it's really, I only get haircuts when I remember I need a beard trim. Right? I condition it every day. I do nothing more than conditioner. Could you imagine how much beard oil would be required to get this thing to soak up beard oil? It'd be like $87 a day.
Yeah,
it'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be most of your expense account.
It really would. It really would. It'd also be a weird line item for the expense account.
It is true. Yeah. Finance doesn't. I think finance would approve it a couple times, but they'd start to ask questions.
They would. But favorite movie by far is The Big Lebowski. And for those who aren't fans of Big Lebowski, first, I doubt your life choices. But second, you've missed the point. The Big Lebowski is a noir detective story where the lead character doesn't realize he's the detective.
This is true. This is true. Your dudeness. One of my favorite as well. I love it. All right, gentlemen, let's dive in. Let's start as we try to. I always love taking our audience through a bit of a journey, right? And there's probably a bunch of different people on this call. Some earlier in their career, some later in their career. And I think it's wonderful to try to provide experiences that others can apply and do things better than we did it, right? Learn from our thoughts, our mistakes, and carry some of this forward. So starting at the macro, there's a lot of conversation around data maturity, a data maturity journey. Years ago, it was a cloud maturity journey as people started to shift to cloud. I think more recently, we've started to see an uptick on how do people rethink the way they apply data, whether it's the protection layer, the quality layer, or really just the gathering and applying and monetizing. And a lot of that has to do, with Gen AI. A lot of that has to do with the data really becoming a differentiator. So let me start with the simple question. What does the new data maturity journey look like for enterprises? Can you unpack that a bit? Casey, maybe we start with you.
Sure, definitely. Well, a little bit, I think no one really knows what Atyeti is. So we are, do primarily engineering within like credit markets. So, Credit Suisse, UBS, we work with Citi, we work with a lot of the major, a lot of other regulated industries. And so they all have a data quality data journey, right? And it's kind of a program that gets restarted and redone every couple of years. And I think a lot of it has to do with the siloed nature of these industries, or of the enterprises themselves. And one of the we redesigned an application for regulatory reporting, which is taking all this data from just a trading system and sending it to a regulatory. And we used Kafka as a backend, and that was like brand new, right? Like and I think the question is that a lot of these problems are because of the siloed nature of the journey, of a lot of these institutions. So I think I kind of went off track slightly. So,
So Howard, bring us back on track. How do you think about this journey conversation for the enterprise?
Sure. So I'm going to start with a little bit of get off my lawn, because I've been doing this for a very long time. And back in the kind of 90s, early aughts, we had this thing called Enterprise Information Management, EIM. EIM very quickly became the latest technology folly, right? You had kind of people in suits and ties telling everyone, you got to get control of your data, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. And they became kind of the early Department of No. And then they became resume generating events. Eventually, nobody wanted to hear from them because it was a monumental amount of work. And what I want everyone to think about for a minute is, how much data do you think we had in the late 90s and early aughts? And then think about, how much data do you have today? And remember that had we actually done EIM in the 90s and aughts and continued that practice, our maturity would be 3 times what it is in any organization, and none of this would be an issue today. Right? Now, today the challenge is you can't do EIM. It is impossible, because the data volumes are entirely too big, the stakeholders are entirely too many, and they don't actually care. The stakeholders don't care that the data is of poor quality, because it is good enough quality for them to get their jobs done. Right? People with new jobs care that the data quality is poor. People with new missions care that the data quality is poor. Right? But your CRO doesn't care about the poor quality of data. Your chief revenue officer doesn't care about the poor quality data, because last year they met their quota. This year they negotiated a quota that they thought they could hit. New data tools may help them do it better. However, they come at a cost. So what you need to think about is, how do you make this something that is in fact bite-sized? How do you make something where my goal isn't to improve the maturity of my company's data from a 1 to a 5? My goal is to improve the maturity of a data set that I need to get a specific outcome that has specific ROI attached to it, that I can move from a 2 to a 2.5. And if you can do that, you can actually make progress inside an organization. And the beautiful part is, if you do it in a way that's bite-sized, if you do it in a way that you can actually achieve, and you can achieve it in 1 to 2 quarters, then you're going to not only be a hero yourself, but you're going to make a hero inside the organization. And then it'll go from the door slamming shut and you can hear the 27 locks like you're walking by a Brooklyn apartment, right? Lock in place, to every door is thrown open and everybody wants to be next because you've made heroes.
That's right. Yeah, incremental, right? With specific milestones. Casey, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to go like one more, like these entities all do kind of end up going back to the same data sets, or going to the same sources and doing it just slightly different. So you have 20 different ways of getting trade data into the system, or particular entities into the system. And there's no real like kind of collaboration across, like, oh, we'll do all the ingestion and then feed it to another group, right? That collaboration, like literally, I mean, there'll be like 3 or 4 different risk systems in an enterprise, because they each do risks slightly different, right? And that's ends up becoming a real challenge when you're trying to transform the data, when you're trying to bring up the overall quality, or like, well, which quality are we looking at? Which group are we looking at? Which team are we kind of working with to get this done? And they sit there and say, oh, well, we're only dealing from, instead of A to Z, they deal with like D to F, right? Like that's their purview. It's like, I remember once in going to a wiki and seeing the definition of done was shipped to QA, literally in the definition. I was just like, oh,
throw it over the fence, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, you pain me.
So let me build on this a bit. So, one thing I hear all the time is tell me that they need more tools, right? Like they're always saying I don't have enough tools. A little bit of joke in there. I got to get you out of your seats. So I think we talk about the way people are rethinking data, this incremental approach, and to your point, getting multiple stakeholders involved, right? I think is a shift in this. How do you think then about the way, specifically through the lens of specialized tooling? There's, I'm here in Manhattan, as you guys know. I think there's probably 50 different, monitoring companies on our floor. How do you think about the way specialized tooling has evolved? And, kind of, I guess, shifting the traditional tech stack to the more Gen AI data-centered tech stack. How does that play out these days? Howard, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. The reality is an operating model is made up of three pieces. It is your people, your process, and your tools. If everyone could just kind of, even in your own head or on a piece of paper, draw that little triangle, and then I want you to fill in with your same pencil the like shade in the percentage of time that you spend on each one. Pretty much everyone is going to fill the entire triangle with tools, right? The reality is I can never get enough people. Really good people are constantly being recruited. And I spend no time on process whatsoever. It worked yesterday. We'll just kind of continue to do it. And we really hope we don't lose the people that know how to do it, right? So like our operating model is so tools heavy, it's ridiculous. So no, we don't need another tool. That being said, we also have a lot of shelfware. We also have a lot of tools that we're just poorly utilizing. We have a lot of tools that we never really operationalized. Can we displace some tools with some new tools? That's possible, I guess. The other good thing is the tool makers recognize this, and the tools have become better and better and better and better in ways that I'm not sure we ever really thought, 10 years ago when we sort of looked at this, I'm not sure we ever even thought that was going to be possible. And yet the tools are, in fact, so much better than they used to be.
Yeah.
Gen AI has a ton of potential, but today I still say we're at the experimentation phase, right? We're at the do not trust and verify and verify and verify, and then verify and verify and verify, right? OpenAI just announced their new agent application that'll actually take control and execute applications and take actions. It is apparently has a 20% efficacy rate, as in it is only right 20% of the time. Not a big deal in a chat application. Pretty big deal when it's booking you airline flights. Pretty big deal when it's starting and stopping virtual machines, right?
Yeah.
The potential is enormous, but the reality is we're seeing a ton of missteps today from organizations.
Yeah, so the 20% of the time it works every time. That doesn't
right.
Yeah. So Casey, as you think about, I think one of the things I think is now too about how effective are we using it? Like people caring more about utilization, caring more about adoption, caring more about like what tool actually saves us time and helps people be more effective versus a tool for a task. I'm hearing that happen a lot. Casey, how do you think about that? How do you think about the shifting of as the tech stack shifts, the specialization of tools and what people are trying to really work on? How do they think about that?
So one thing is engineers love to do bake-offs of tools, right? So they love to have a bunch of tools that they sit there and they do some sort of assessment on the tools. And you're like, how did you make these assessments? And it's not a real life scenario. And they go through this. So, and they just kind of don't make a decision. They just keep testing different tools sometimes, right? Until you actually have.
Terrible. I feel attacked, Casey. I'm an analyst firm. I feel totally attacked. That's all we do all day is bake-offs of tools. That's just so
that's
weird.
your job, right? You have to know all the tools.
You
whereas,
tell me that this was going to be a hit piece, man. Come on.
I walk you into these things. You don't know what to expect, guys. That's how it works.
So the thing is that you also mentioned, Howard, that the other two things, the people and the process, right? And the thing is that one of the things that, people need to do is sit there and take a step back and say, what is the process that we're trying to do? So an example being, we were trying to do exception management on consolidated audit trail. It's like a bunch, like in equities markets, it's like sending, millions of ticks a day. If the other counterparty goes offline, you have millions of breaks. But the thing is all of those breaks are kind of the same thing. We're putting them all into a UI. And I sat there and said, wait, some user is supposed to go in and like bulk select 1 million records or 100,000 records. Like, have you ever seen 100,000 records on a page? No one's going to do that. I was like, why don't we figure out a better processing of tools, and so that we think about the person who's going to be using this, and they can take action that is better for what they need to do for their job, and then that then has a better for the enterprise as a whole. And because all what they wanted to do was just update status saying these 100,000 records are all going to be fixed as soon as our counterparty comes back online, right? Or whatever is the error code that comes in. You know what I mean? And so they didn't need like some of the other tools that were in the space, right? They actually just needed to rethink how they wanted to do their process. And then it's a matter of like, okay, what tools do we have, or what kind of views do we need in order to display this to kind of go forward with the engagement. On the flip side, sometimes tools make people rethink the way that they do things, right? So something like Spark, or Databricks, or I was talking about this company called Ray.io and other things. They start rethinking about how you do distributed like bulk large like data processing or compute processing, or and I honestly, Conduktor is a great example too of like governance at scale, right? And those, then you can sit there and say, well, these are the opportunities that you can do. You can rethink the way that you were doing things. And as enterprises move more and more away from like kind of traditional engineering practices to be more data, like data always used to be, here's a read-only view of my database, right? And that was like, the analytics team. And now data is core to the business. Whether or not they're using LLMs, that's completely different, but they're so incredibly important to what the business is. The data tools and the data processes are going to go into that next layer of importance as well. I mean, and so I think that's hence this, a lot of the things that we're talking about here is that rise of the kind of the Wild West in the data area. There's a lot of kind of flux and, ways of doing things. And I think that it's kind of where DevOps used to be. DevOps is still kind of a little bit Wild West, but I think this is like an area that is, rapidly maturing.
So I don't think you have a choice either, right? To be honest, this is effectively the culmination of what those of us that started talking about digital transformation 10 years ago were talking about. Right. When we talked about digital transformation, what we talked about was you're going to be displaced. You're going to be disrupted. Right. And the reality is it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that when you don't have a digital native that really understands what that displacement can be, that disruption can be, and executes on it. Every single one of them is a data platform. They are nothing more than a data platform with a unique and interesting question. Right. The reason we haven't seen more of it is it's really hard to be a data platform, but it's becoming easier. And we're now in kind of a data arms race. I know it's easy to say we're in an AI arms race, but AI without data is completely useless.
Sure.
Right? It's just an interesting therapist for you to talk to that doesn't know anything.
Well, on this stay in this pocket. So first plug for a great book, Disrupt Yourself, Whitney Johnson, talks about putting the power of disruption to work and really thinking about it through the lens of how do you incrementally, not big bang, but how do you start to build disruption in your business in the simplest forms, from idea, trying, right? A/B testing your business, ultimately before someone does it to you, and then you're reacting, right? You're trying to save your business. So very much great book. And I think great concepts, but what you're both talking about. Two, we did a little test ourselves. So I won't tell you which ones, but we took two different LLMs, to two different tools, asked the same exact question about technology integration capabilities. One gave us like an MBA answer of all the brilliant ways these two things work together, where they can help. The other one said they don't work together. True story. Literally, and the answer was this long. One was like this long, right? So I think to your point, it's a lot of it is.
Look, Quentin, Gemini is getting much better, sir. Gemini is getting much better.
I love you plugged it. But I think data, the way you're feeding things, the sequence of information, whether it's the chunking of the human part or it's what things are being fed and taught. We're in inning one of this, right? So let me ask, 2 minutes or less, both of you, and then I want some questions from the audience. If someone was thinking about what's one or two things they can start to do to apply or navigate and apply data quality within the business, what advice would you give to your younger self or to someone on the call thinking about that problem? Casey, start with you.
So I think a couple things, like data quality I see is really understanding kind of the metadata around data and as it goes through the systems, right? I would say is probably, one of the most important things, and that you kind of, whether you're using, a defined, it's kind of like the API definitions or the Kafka, all the different things, like you have data everywhere in your system and it all has metadata, and that helps you kind of sit there and understand who owns what. Then you go back to that core thing that Howard said earlier is, trying to find responsibility for, that data, right? And that really, if no one's responsible, they just throw it into the mud, right? So.
It's good. Yeah. So I think how do you categorize? How do you create accountability, responsibility, right? Very smart. Howard, what about you? And then we got a couple questions in the chat, so I want to get to those.
Cool. So I'm going to say DAM. Define, assess, measure. Right? Define your terms. What does a sale mean to you? What does it mean when you ship something to production? What is a product? How do you define it? Like, define the terms that you're likely that you talk about as part of the business.
Yeah.
Right? Generally, when I would do an assessment with a company, the first question I ask is, how do you define a sale? And if I have 18 people in the room, I get 26 answers. Right? Because sales, the second somebody signs on the dotted line, it's a sale. Well, for finance, though, it's the second they receive the check. Right? For development, it's once code is shipped to QA. Right? Like, everyone has a definition, but their definition is highly specific to them. Well, we can't figure out how many sales you have as a company and how to improve it if you all can't agree on a definition. So define, right? Define what is good enough. Define what matters to you. Then assess. What do you have and how far away are you from each of those definitions, right? And then measure. Create a way to repeatedly measure and produce the measurement, right? Produce a response, produce a report. Hey, this is the thing that not only is going to get us the closest, but is already the closest.
Yeah.
There's value here, but the level of effort necessary to go from where it is to where we need it to be is entirely too great. So we're moving it to the back of the bus. Define, assess, and measure.
Love it. Really brilliant as always, my friend. And I think we talk about that, I think, in our go-to-market too. We have to be audible ready, and we have to be able to use consistent words. If we all define a thing in different ways and things mean different to everyone, the team calls, the staff calls, the operational reviews, it becomes very nebulous. Yeah. It's hard to make progress, right? So consistency in the words we use and how we define things, and not just data across anything, it's such a critical component. All right, let's get to the first question. So data silos continue to be a challenge despite technological advancements. How can organizations dismantle silos to enable seamless collaboration between data, operations, and AI teams? Who wants to take that one?
I don't care. I mean, I really don't care. Like, you're never going to stop people from creating silos because we're tribes. We naturally form tribes, and tribes are small. So stop worrying about the data silo. Instead, there are so many really incredibly good tools that can handle it on the back end.
Yep.
Right? We have entire definitions of tools that help with kind of consistent schema mapping. So don't worry about it. Let the silos be created. Worry about the quality of the data in the silo, and then use other tools to link the data together and pull the insights out. Stop worrying about everything going into one platform. It's not.
That's really smart. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we used to think, how do you rationalize everything through single systems of records? I don't know if that really works that much anymore. An average LLM is probably
it never did.
Yeah, no, I was at Scholastic, and every time we designed a new master database for all the books, we now had, we had 10, now we have 11. It's it's just because there are so many different use cases for that data, right? And no one, if you're in the teacher store, you don't need the kid view of that particular book, right? I mean, there is,
Right.
the different audiences had different needs, right? And
Well, the whole concept of multi-vector database, right? I mean, we're bringing together pictures, words, videos, all these different things so that different people can ask questions and infer completely different types of things. You can't have that in a silo to make that work.
Well, but at the same time, in a silo, I guarantee I know the owner of it.
That's fair.
I think the question is, and I think, what the question would be is the data silo isn't necessarily in of itself bad, but if you're trying to go across, if you have a bunch of data silos that you don't know anything about, and you're trying to apply governance, or you're trying to apply different things, then there's a concern in that. Really the question is the ownership of those silos, and is there kind of a understanding of, you own this kind of data, and if I ask you for it, I would like, information from you about it, right? Like, give me all of the authors, or,
Right.
give me all of the things. If you just kind of have a mud of stuff, and they're all muds of stuff, then you have a bunch of muddy silos, then you have a problem. Right?
Then you get
silos aren't bad when they're authoritative. Silos aren't bad when they're clearly owned, and silos aren't bad when they're the single source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's when those things stop being true that's a problem. Well, I have my data silo, but it's made up of 17 other data silos, all of which are out of date the second I made the copy. You know what I mean? Like, those are just bad practices. Data silos become a problem because when data silos are created out of the necessity of we don't communicate, that's a different issue.
And then we get the Big Lebowski.
I own my data. Then we get the Big Lebowski. Yeah.
Right. That's like your opinion, man. Right. Like, I mean, like, come on. So, all right, I got one more, and then I want to make sure, I always give, because again, it's a privilege doing with you guys in the audience. I don't want to abuse time. So, simple question, hard question, but simple ideas. How do people go about modernizing their tech stack without overwhelming teams? You talk beautifully about the people and the process and the tooling, and you could have the best tools in the world, but if there's already 9 different tech debt problems and finance debt problems, it becomes overwhelming. So how would you give great advice to companies on this all the time. What would your advice be for people that are trying to consolidate, rationalize, and modernize? What's some advice? Howard, start with you.
I just go right back to Dan. Define what the outcome is that you're looking for. Assess the team, not the tools you have. Assess the team. Where's your team at? What's their readiness? What's their maturity? What's their willingness to take on new tools? What are the things they do well? We're not buying tools for what you do well. What are the things they don't do well? That's what we buy tools for. Now, measure the available tools against the assessment. And you'll really quickly determine, entirely too often, we're like, we're really good at this thing. Cool, let's go buy a tool that's also really good at that thing. Why would I do that? Right? If I'm really good at first base, I don't need another first baseman.
Right. Don't automate that, right? Automate winners.
Correct.
That's really good. Case, what do you think?
Yeah, I've been in actually quite a few transformations. Like, I've gone through ones where it's top down, the CEO basically walking the halls, making sure that everyone's in their, safe meetings, and redoing everything from we're going to be hybrid cloud, and we're going to be DevOps, and we're going to use safe, and we're going to do all the things at once, right? And the whole company is going, right? To kind of like someone who's like, I have a little extra funds in my area, and I want to look how I can move towards at least creating the maybe the platform isn't ready yet, maybe we're not ready to be hybrid cloud, but that's my goal, is that I know that my application will needs to have that burst of that burst capabilities of the cloud, whereas the majority of it's currently on-prem. I have to, that's part of my vision. I'm going to cobble together a small team that starts to do this. And so, you see their top, kind of down, or somewhere, not necessarily like developer up, I find is like okay for small, companies. But once you get to like larger organizations, you really need that like kind of, not necessarily the MD level. I mean, a good MD is amazing, like in that, kind of thing. But like, it's usually someone who owns like 1 or 2 apps, who just is like sitting there going, okay, I'm going to reallocate some of my team to kind of start thinking about these problems, right?
That's right.
And but it is a journey, because it's a enterprise transformation is a long tail, and there's a lot of things, like, so we talk a lot about data, but really a lot of it is like those foundations of like, how do you embrace change over time? Like the day two operations of these things is so important for how these systems will work. And that becomes like kind of a lot of times the bottleneck in that transformation journey. People and then they don't have like the next day that can come in and actually run it for them.
I was with a Fortune 50 CTO, and I asked same type of question, right? And his response was very much synonymous with what you just said, Casey. It was, go where there's density of doers and identify what they would like to delegate or do. Yep. Because if you go two bottoms, it's going to be microed. If you go too high, it's not really going to have semblance of what's going to move the needle. And you have to start doing it. If you don't start doing it, everything, Elon said this, everything works on PowerPoint, right? Everything looks great in the boardroom, but it actually doesn't when you get into practice. So you just got to start to do it. So where is their density?
Yeah, I would say two things. First, look for people that are curious. Curiosity. You can't teach curiosity. You cannot. You can encourage curiosity, and you can stamp it out. Don't ever stamp it out. Right? Encourage curiosity and look for curiosity. And when you find pockets of curiosity, you found pockets of doers.
That's right.
The problem with just doers with no curiosity is they're going to march in the wrong direction and never ask the question on what the right direction is. They're never going to look up and go, "Oh crap, guys, do you realize like we're water and we're trying to push up a hill?" And then the second is be water. So cloud only is stupid. Cloud first, fine. Be water. Go after the path that will get you the most value, the easiest. Eventually, everything is washed away by water, right? It created the Grand Canyon.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, so find the thing with speed, and that you're moving within the stream, right? Otherwise, you're pushing both. I got two more, and then I think.
Well, I had one comment on that. Yeah. So the one of the key ideas here is that if you have a small, really good team that kind of has the ability to kind of innovate and break things and set things up and fail and do all the things, they get to a certain point where they've established like the path, right? They then select teams that have similar ideas and a similar workload that is supported by that first piece, right? So you have the spear that goes in, but you don't go select the most difficult one, right? You select the ones that are validating that this spear is going in the right direction. You get a couple of those, your path starts getting wider. You start building out like on ramps and off ramps. Then you have your whole interstate going through that, is able to, deal with all the other, kinds of things that are going through it. But those two initial parts, like finding that kind of cross-team, cross-organizational kind of SWAT team, if you would, alpha team, whatever you want to call it. And then the trailblazers of different app teams that are sympathetic and curious and, have been kind of wanting to engage. That's, navigating that politics is so important. I can't say that enough.
Both of you brilliant. And you both said one of the main words. We talked about this a lot when we were in Vegas together, curiosity. Curiosity is what creates, right? Empathy and curiosity. The ones that just do with no curiosity, they're probably going to put you in a square in a circle. Yeah. So two fast ones. I know we're way over, so thanks for staying with us and thanks for the questions. One last question. I'll paraphrase. Everyone's relying on AI for many different things, some good, some bad. How do you ensure that data feeding these AI systems is not only high quality, but contextually relevant, unbiased, and reflective of real world diversity? What frameworks or methodologies can help balance these priorities while scaling AI? How do you guys think about that?
I mean, again, we're in the experimentation phase. So don't. I know that sounds dumb, but the reality is, there are almost no organizations that are mature enough to ensure their data sets have adequate diversity, to ensure their data sets lack bias, and that also understand AI well enough to overcome the AI's bias. Right. All AIs are biased, all of them, every single one of them, right? And so if you're asking that question, the answer is you can't and don't. There are so many incredibly good use cases for AI today that can get your organization moving down that path by simply removing those use cases where bias would be a problem. And concentrating on those where bias wouldn't be a problem. You give yourself all kinds of runway within tons of open AI without taking on the risk. So look for those that don't have the risk in the AI use case.
Yeah.
Don't look for those that require you to do a bunch of work that you're not mature enough to do.
Yeah,
Aim for what's right for you.
Yeah, if you're using AI to report your stuff to regulatory, you're really wanting to make sure that there's some controls in there. So I think the idea is rather than I think there's a kind of like, if you think about zero trust, is like you don't you verify, right? So the if you're using AI in any sort of way, you need some sort of verification process that's done by people to make sure
Experts.
that what's going in. Experts. Yeah, exactly. Not people. Experts. Like the subject matter expert that is sitting there going, yes, this is actually makes sense, because the
goal has to be to make your experts faster and more efficient, not have fewer experts.
Exactly.
Right? That's right. I watched a really good demo of an early AI system that was used to speed up cybersecurity investigation. And they basically took an expert and put them in front of the old interface, and took someone who'd never seen the system in any way and put them in front of the new interface. And the expert got every single answer correct, but slow. The AI got 70% of answers correct. And when it was wrong, they thought for sure the answer was correct, because they didn't understand it well enough to know the answer should have been like 26,000, and the response that AI gave was like 12. Yeah. Well, those things they're not even close. If it was off by 1,000, it'd be no problem. It was off by multiple digits, right? And it takes an expert to understand that this doesn't pass the sniff test. So that's a very good point, Casey.
And that's $1 billion mistake right there.
So that's a put you out of. That's a one-way decision mistake. Right?
Yes. Correct. Resume generating.
Baselining. So take away a couple things. One, find the low-hanging fruit use cases that aren't going to put the business out of business. Find the people who really their time is super important, and find where there's mundane manual tasks that help accelerate, and have a trust and verify and validate approach to that. That is the way right now. I think we want to pretend, just like 12 years ago, whatever it is now, everything was moving to cloud. Well, we moved a bunch of the wrong stuff to cloud. The bills went up, the performance went down, and then services got better. It's very. So let me do this. First, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on. It's an absolute pleasure to see you both. Can't wait to have a couple whiskeys together and laugh about some other things, including AI. But again, really appreciate your time and wisdom. It's always a pleasure. For those looking to upskill your business with really engineering-led research by technology practitioners like H2, please reach out to GigaOm. They're a brilliant company. I've had the privilege of working with them in the past. I think they bring, again, a lot of real-world relevant experience to give you ideas and insights on how to upscale and apply data wherever you are in your maturity journey. Second, obviously, reach out to Atyeti. Again, brilliant partners, worked with them in multiple stages of my career. They can help with technology services to transform your digital ecosystem, your digital transformation, and have a wealth of experience. And again, industry practitioners who have done the job, lived in the world that you live in. And for those that are with us, send any feedback and thoughts on topics or key things you're interested in. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. We'll send out some invites for feedback and invite you to the next great Kafka Coffee Talk. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Ciao. Thank you.